Welcome back to Succeed with Dyslexia. In this series, we discuss news and topics that go on in the dyslexia community. So make sure you like this video, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of our future episodes. Here's what's going to be covered in this video. We'll first hear from creator and photographer Caroline Smith. Next, we'll hear from dyslexia expert Liz Loly. Afterwards, we'll hear from educational consultant Lorraine Petersen. And lastly, we'll hear from Quin Chandler from award-winning international assistive tech suppliers Scanning Pens. Throughout this episode, we're going to discuss why the labeling of dyslexia is so important and what this means in the context of assessment, diagnosis, and moving forward into a better supportive future. We'll be exploring support avenues with creator and photographer Caroline Smith about the difference that labeling can make and just how it is that dyslexia can mean so much in terms of who we feel like we are. Liz Loly gives us a parental perspective of the early steps on a dyslexia journey and how to seek the right kind of support and education to make sure that learners are going forward into an inclusive and accessible tomorrow. As mentioned, we'll also be checking in with Lorraine Petersen OBE about how good practice for children with special educational needs in schools is the right place to begin talking about assistive technology and the support it can offer. It's a jam-packed episode full on perspectives on dyslexia, dyslexia parenting, and so much more. We hope you enjoy it. In our first segment, we're lucky enough to chat to creator and photographer Caroline Smith all about the ways that a parent can respond to the dyslexia label being applied to their children and how, amongst other things, this enables the growth of personal support frameworks that break down barriers in the learning world. We'll also be focusing on how this kind of positive labeling can foster better understanding and awareness of dyslexia on a global scale, and why it's so important for parents to be open with their children about their own dyslexia narrative.
So I know you've started tentatively to start that identification journey, and we've been looking a lot here at Succeed around the importance of that label and what it means and what it might enable for children and adults. So why is it important for you guys as a family and for you as a parent that your daughter ultimately gets the formal label, the diagnosis, if you like, of dyslexia?
I think it's really important because I want people to understand how to teach her, how to interact with her. And by her having a label of that she is dyslexic, I think it then can open some more doors to her in that people will then have a bit of a more understanding of how, well, why she's like she is. You know, it's not because she's naughty that she forgot her homework. It's because she's dyslexic, you know. It's not naughty that she didn't do her reading last night because, you know, she doesn't want to, because reading all these words, they all move around the page and she just doesn't want to do that late at night, you know. So I think it gives people a more of an understanding as to why she's like it is. But moving forward for things like doing GCSEs, I want her to be able to have extra time in the exams. And I also want her to look at it in a different way, in that she's very creative, and that is her strong point. She's very arty, she's very crafty, she loves sewing, she loves food and all those sorts of things. So I want her to push her to do those. And as we know, lots of dyslexic people are, you know, inclined to do more creative things. So that is where I'm kind of trying to push her towards. But by having this dyslexic label, I think it gives her, you know, I'm this and I'm going to do this, and hopefully I'm hoping it will help her, you know.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
And I know how creative you are with your photography and so on. And so how are you open with your children about your own journey with dyslexia, yes, Caroline? Yeah. So I'm guessing then, well, for a start, you're a great role model. And then beyond that, maybe it makes it easier to have those conversations because you're able to share your experience. How did those conversations with Phoebe play out between you as mother and daughter around dyslexia, if you're comfortable enough to share that and it's not too private?
No. I can't spell anything, and that's why I really rely on my phone and technology to help me. And so often Phoebe will say, "How do you spell this?" And I'll be like, "I don't know." You know, and I used to be a teacher, and I remember being in the classroom and children would say, "How do you spell this, miss?" And I'd be thinking, "I have no idea, I don't know." And I said, "Well, let's spell it out," you know, and I'd sort of try to get the brainier children to help them do it. And I'd learn tactics of how to do it. Now in a situation where we're at home, I'll say to my husband, "How do you spell it?" And there was a time where when I was first going out with him, he would say, so, right, well, let's break it down and let's spell it. And I'd be like, oh my gosh, this is so embarrassing, you know? And it would just make me feel even worse that I couldn't spell a basic word, that I would end up thinking, I'm not going to ask him, I'll just think of a different word to change. But as the years have gone on and we've got to know each other, he knows to not say that. And he just spells it out for me. And we know what the word is. So if Phoebe asked me, I know that, but I've gone off track now. What was the question?
No, you haven't. No, I'm loving listening to it, because it's about how you deal with it as a family. And
Yes.
like I said, you know, your lived experience now with your daughter, kind of, you know, making her more confident and feel, and you know, inspired about what the future holds. Like you say, you suspect she's super creative. I know you are too, and I guess getting inspired by a wonderful mum to think, yeah, there's lots of things open to me. And how do you encourage that as a mum with her?
Well, so it's been actually quite difficult at school because, you know, whether or not children know in her year if they're dyslexic or not, hardly anybody has come out to say they are dyslexic. And so therefore she sort of has gone in and sort of said, oh, you know, I think I'm a bit dyslexic. And I was going, oh, and they obviously don't understand what it is. So I spoke to the teacher about it and I said, look, we need to put a good like tone on this. Like, we want people to think this is amazing to be dyslexic. And they were a bit like, okay. Anyway, I sent them a video link to, it's like a cartoon that explains what dyslexia is. There's famous people, I'm sure you know it.
Yes, and actually we can put the link when we share this chat. I know the video you mean.
Yes.
We can put that link in for other parents who think, oh, I like the sound of that.
Yeah. So I asked them to share it in her class, which Phoebe sort of came back and said, did you tell them to do that? I said, no, I just sort of suggested maybe we should all, you know, look at what dyslexia is, because people don't understand what it is, and maybe we should try and explain that it's not a bad thing, it's a good thing. So anyway, I think that slightly helped. I think me talking about it at home helps a lot, and I'm quite open to talking about it in all areas of my work. You know, I'll say, I write a blog, but I don't write it. I just have voice notes that I'm constantly doing into my phone, and then I have somebody that writes it for me. You know, I don't do any of my bills. You know, they know that anything to do with bills and numbers and things like that, my husband will do. My husband sorts out my tax return. And so I've put in lots of things in place, and they're quite aware that the things that I'm good at are these things, and the things that I can't do, I have help for, and I work out what help I need. So we're quite open as a family, definitely, about talking about it.
In our next segment, we speak with dyslexia expert Liz Loly. As a communications and education consultant, she's sharing with us today her advice for the parents of children with dyslexia who are setting out on their dyslexia journey, who might be feeling confused or apprehensive. We'll be focusing on the importance of communicating positively with schools and accepting that the way living and learning happens in your household may need to change, and how building resilience can arm young learners for whatever the future holds.
What advice then would you give to a parent who's just at the beginning of that journey, or feel a bit lost? So they're on the way somewhere, but don't know where that place is, and are horribly, you know, stressed out and confused and so on.
Yeah, it's something that often I do speak to parents in that partly because friends of mine say, oh, I've got this friend and they're worried because they think their child might be dyslexic, or dyslexia has been mentioned. Would you mind having a chat? I'm like, absolutely. I love to think that I can try and help people who are in that position of thinking that it's something really awful, and then being able to show them, you know, there is hope and it's not an awful thing. One of my key bits of advice, and I have to be 100% honest here and say, I know I didn't always get this right, that communication with school is so important. And at secondary school, I believe I have got that right. And I'm lucky that my son's school have been willing to communicate with me and understand the importance. At primary school, although I had a very good relationship with many people at his primary school, I talked at his primary school part-time. As a parent, I let my frustrations sometimes I'd say it wasn't a bad thing because it drove things forward. It got him some of the support he needed and slightly changed the ways of thinking. But at times, yeah, I just got too frustrated and couldn't deal with it. And there was even a meeting where I just had to walk out and leave his dad to kind of carry on, because I thought, I can't deal with this, because it was so emotional to me. And I think that's one big bit of advice for parents: try and communicate with the school positively. Accept that you are going to be emotional. It's a very emotional thing. And that's okay. You're allowed to. But remember, the school isn't against you. They are trying to help as well. Sometimes they don't have the knowledge that we would like them to have. Their time is limited. They've got so many other things to do. But don't go to meetings with school expecting a battle. But do expect emotions to come about, and that's okay. But I think if you can get that communication with the school and work together on a child's strengths, and so much of what you know about your child from home will be useful for the school to know. So for my son, anything to do with numbers was brilliant. He always loved numbers. I remember there was one Mother's Day where a couple of weeks after, I think it was, he had no idea what they'd bought me for Mother's Day, but he knew exactly how much it cost, because numbers just stick. Things, the fact it was perfume, no idea. So I was able to say to the school, look, at home, I number instructions for him, because then he knows how many things he's got to do. And he will remember, like, okay, 1, 2, 3, there's another one there. And then he'll be able to do it. Whereas if you just gave him 4 things to do, especially at that age, if he remembered the first one, it would be amazing. So it's the knowledge you have at home and their interests from home. I've recently worked with a boy who has a dyslexia diagnosis, who's 7, absolutely loves Lego. And his mum told me that. So I was like, great, we're bringing that into what we're doing. Can you take some photos of him playing with Lego at home? Send them to me. And then he talked about what he was doing, and then he constructed these amazing sentences, and he was so into it. Whereas if I'd have just said, right, I'm going to get you to do some writing, and I'd chosen a subject that I'm interested in that he had no interest in, is so different. And it was always the same with Josh. I mean, a lot of his initial reading skills came about thanks to football and match attacks cards. And it always used to amaze me that he could read these really complicated looking foreign names on match attacks cards, because it was to do with football and he loved football, so it just stuck. And then other things, it was like, well, no, I don't want to read a book. But from that, he then developed the skill of reading alongside other things. So use their interests, talk to school, know that it's not all a negative thing. There are so many benefits, but yeah, it's that acceptance as well. Acceptance that you will get frustrated, acceptance that your child has got a frustrating journey, because the education system isn't set up for children with dyslexia. So there will be some challenges along the way, but if you can help them along the way and help them to become more independent as they're going through school, they're going to be so resilient and ready to excel in the real world. They'll fly. And that, that's the bit that's so exciting and that please hang on to.
Now, we're lucky enough to have educational consultant Lorraine Petersen OBE. Lorraine is here with us to talk in more detail about the scale of the difference that good practice in schools can make to a child who has dyslexia, and how there are gaps that need to be filled in many teaching professionals' knowledge about dyslexia and other neurodiverse differences. She'll also be giving us her lowdown on why assistive tech support for learners with dyslexia is the best tool to dismantle the roadblocks that stand between some learners with dyslexia and a successful educational experience.
I mean, I go into schools all the time. I've been doing some SEND reviews recently. And I've seen some stunning practice.
Yes.
And I've seen some, incredible one-page aid memoirs for teachers, just bullet points of things to do, strategies to use. And you just think, if every teacher had that in their folder on it when they're planning their lessons, and it would just make such a difference. Yeah. Because I still think that too many teachers don't know what they don't know. Yeah. They're going into a classroom with 30 young people of whatever age, and sitting in front of them are probably 5, 6, 7 who all have additional needs. And actually, they have not been trained to either identify or to intervene and know what to do.
Yeah. And you're right, it is, when you say it like that, it's shocking because, and I know at the British Dyslexia Association have campaigned for many years to have SEN, of which, of course, dyslexia is one, be included in initial teacher training. And that's an ongoing campaign. It sounds like it should be a no-brainer that should be in there, and that this should not be a controversial ask, I don't think.
And also, Donna, and I've said that, I mean, this has been a mantra of mine for years, what's good practice for children with SEN is good practice for everybody.
Yes.
So if you put in place some strategies that might help a youngster that might have dyslexia, you're not putting anything in that will stop anybody else learning.
No, you're right. And, there's a phrase that's used a lot now, Lorraine. All teachers are teachers of SEN children. Yeah. And you're right. There's this concept of, if you're getting it right for children who have barriers to learning, all children benefit, and adults in learning environments too. Yeah. And the fact that this isn't a niche issue, that a child is sent away to be, in quotes, fixed or sorted out in some way. It's at the heart of learning. And actually, when we work with those kids, it benefits all our children as well. So I love what you've said. Yes, please do.
Sorry, I was just going to say one other thing that I again is a bit of a soapboxy bit for me, but we've also learned during the pandemic the breadth of support that technology can give us. We've all latched onto technology in a way that none of us were using technology pre-COVID. And for some youngsters, the use of that technology has opened the door. So, I go into school still, and, every single child has got to write everything. And yet, they can use a laptop, they can use an iPad, they can dictate into a mobile phone, but they still have to write. And, you just think, some of our youngest, even some pupils in primary years, by the time they get into the world of work, there will not be pens and paper. There won't be. They will be using technology. So why are we making them write when that's their barrier? And for a lot of children with specific learning difficulties, writing is the barrier. Reading might be as well, but writing is often the barrier. And now we know that, you quoting, but Microsoft or Google, they've got so many adaptable programs that you can use to, get bigger text or voice activate, all of those things that are already built into your computer. You don't have to buy them. They're not add-ons. So to me, I think that one of the positive way forwards is about we've got to embed technology in everything that we're doing now.
Now, sticking with the theme of assistive technology and reading aids, we're going to learn more about what assistive tech is out there. Joining us is Quin Chandler from award-winning international assistive tech suppliers Scanning Pens, and he's going to walk us through what's available in 2022 and what's the best way to go about implementing life-changing devices in ways that actually work for kids and not taking a one-size-fits-all approach. Tech solutions need to be tailored to support the needs of the individual.
And there's everything from computer software that supports your reading and your writing to audiobooks, iPads, this kind of stuff that's out there. And I think there's such a wide range of things that schools already have in place that enables students to, access text and access their learning in a better way and in a more inclusive way. The focus that we have at Scanning Pens is about the independent reading aids. And we talk a lot about, and I believe this wholeheartedly across the whole assistive tech industry, we talk a lot about supporting independence, enabling students to learn by doing, empowering students to feel that they can and develop a can-do attitude. And I think that would be, if I was kind of pigeonholing assistive tech, I would talk about that, But yeah, such a wide variety of things out there that I guess just meet such a wide variety of needs.
Absolutely, and I guess certain schools, I guess, are at different stages in the understanding of what assistive tech is out there. And you have, I guess, in some schools they've got lots of assistive tech, and other schools they're probably thinking, how do we implement it? If we were to bring in assistive tech, what would that look like? Do we need special training? Does this, what does that kind of look like? So in your kind of experience of what have you kind of seen with regards to how schools have implemented tech into their schools and how that kind of is impacted positively for the students?
It's a really good question, because there's two sides to every coin, right? And some schools, and not just schools, I don't want to talk badly about schools, but some of us as people, we run before we can walk, right? So we see the new, let's say, iPad. Oh my God, I've got budget for 15 of these. Schools are probably thinking, I don't have budget at all, but I might have budget for these. And then actually they run, and then there's no thought process about the implementation. Or you might see something at a show, or you might see something in a magazine and think, wow, this would be fantastic. But you're not the end user. So you haven't thought about the implementation, and that can actually, mean that things that are really valuable go into the cupboard of shame, and collect dust, that kind of thing, or software that you've subscribed to and isn't used. And that actually has been, again, like I said, working within EdTech since 2013. I have seen a real shift in that mindset. I think I watched the implementation of Chromebooks, iPads in schools, and trained a lot around that. And there was so many examples of people, running before they can walk, or not having synergy between an IT department that have bought them and the teaching department that are going to use them, and that kind of thing. But I do think, as with anything in life, there needs to be a strategy. And I think the beauty of the majority of assistive tech products is that schools can trial them first.
Yeah.
So I might meet you, Darren, and talk to you about the scanning pens that we provide. And you might say, this actually fulfills some of the needs I've got. I've waded through a lot of paper. This will simplify my process with that. It'll help me process text, decode what I'm trying to read. And you might think, brilliant, but you might not know that it works. Because again, something that is really important in any, I guess, discussion is not assuming that it's a one shoe fits all. So I'm talking about our products, a reading aid. It doesn't necessarily support every dyslexic person. You might want your human reader. You might want a computer. So the trial process is great first to really, you might have an identification of students in your mind, but then to get it into play, whether that's in the classroom or in another setting, and to get it into play in a free environment is great. And I think it gives you an idea of how it works. But beyond that, we as a company, we will always offer training. And I know a number of companies, I'm sure, will do the same, whether like you and I now on Zoom, or whether we're in the school, whatever it be. And then resources that support the use of the technology that's being used. So again, if I can talk best about scanning pens, because that's where I do my work, we actually have fantastic resource books created by our education team. So these are short stories and comprehension activities that build students' familiarity with the pen and its functions, but also help their students sort of self-supporting documents. So it helps a teacher really know if that resource is supporting the student's needs. So not only is it helping the student, it's helping the teachers really understand.
Thank you so much for watching, but here's a quick overview of what's to come. Throughout the month of September, we'll be talking all things mental health with Group's founder, Penny Aston, and why finding the right support for those of us with dyslexia and literacy differences is so important. We'll also be checking in with Mike Stiles to talk about the dyslexia landscape in Aotearoa, New Zealand, as well as showcasing the work he's doing to shape the field of dyslexia for the benefit of future generations. Now here's a special date for your diary. On Monday, October 3rd, we'll be airing a special dyslexia news episode where we're joined by Dame Rachel de Souza, the Children's Commissioner for England. We'll be chatting about why it was that Dame Rachel's The Big Ask and The Big Answer survey and its commitment to support children in school to achieve their dreams, as well as its ongoing pledge to support children's mental health and well-being throughout one of the most difficult periods in educational history. And of course, it is the end of summer for many of us. The days are getting longer and cooler, class is back in session for the new semester, and if you look out of the window, the trees might even be getting ready to go red. And so are we. We'll leave you with this: 2022 is our year of inclusivity, and we'd love it if you joined us too. It's October. It also happens to be Dyslexia Awareness Month, and that means it's time to go red for dyslexia.
GoRedForDyslexia is a global campaign where we raise awareness of dyslexia and celebrate the amazing things that people with dyslexia can do. It's all about taking back the colour red, a colour that is traditionally used to highlight our mistakes and making it something to be proud of. 2022 is our year of inclusivity, and we want to foster a better, more accessible world for all.
You can get involved by helping us spread the word by thinking about inclusivity where you work and study, wearing red to help raise awareness of dyslexia, or asking your local buildings and landmarks to light up red for the world to see.
So go ahead and head on over to our website to find out more. And that all brings us to the end of this episode. If you found this informative and would like to learn more, please feel free to click this link here and view episode 17. You just watched episode 18, and yes, we do come out with a new episode every single month in the hopes of spreading more awareness about dyslexia. Once again, thank you so much for watching. If you have any comments or questions, leave them in the comments below, and we'll see you next time.